All right, so along the same lines as the previous video, where we learned about elements that we can use instead of divs, I'm going to destroy all the content within here. And right up front, we're going to be learning about a line break. So I'm going to save this so you guys can see how it looks now. See, this is shown right there, and that's shown right there. We want space between them, so go ahead and create an element. Now you would think this BR, or break element, needs to be written like this, but it doesn't. So there are such thing as self-closing elements within HTML. This is wrong, by the way. This is right. So if you're creating an element that doesn't have any inner content, so inner content is the stuff between tags, if it doesn't have any of that, you can create certain elements like this. An image tag is another perfect example, and we're going to be learning about that as well. So I'm going to copy this a few times. And this is generally bad practice, but we haven't got into CSS yet, so this is the only way that we can reliably break lines as we need them. And as you can see, it's now put in all these single lines between the content. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create some div soup with an A element here. And for all intents and purposes, let's just imagine that it links to somewhere real. And then we need wow, we can just use a paragraph. So this is a sample text for the article that you will be reading in a moment. Let's close that P element there. So I'm going to save this and refresh. And cool, so we do see that. Now, this works. If this is what the page was, this would work. However, we can use HTML5. I'm going to show you guys. Okay, so I got a bunch of those, and they're all in a div, and it looks messy. But on the front, it looks exactly how we want it to. Let's say this was a news website, and each one of these is a different article, or links to a different article. Why use div elements then when we can actually use the HTML5 article element? And if you save it and refresh it, it looks the exact same. The only difference is now, without even reading any of the internal content of this tag, we know that it specifically contains an article. So I'm going to go ahead and delete all these div elements. I'm going to copy this. And now look, that looks a bit messy, but we know, just by looking at it, we don't even have to read it. We know that each of these contains an article. And I'm going to refresh, and as you can see, it doesn't look any different because it does the exact same thing, except in here now, it looks a little better. Because we see a header, we see articles, and we actually don't have to use any divs in here. But let's go ahead and add one. So this is going to be called main. I'm going to drop down right to the end, and I'm going to close it. Now if I save it and refresh, within the page you will notice that it looks even better now. There's a header, there's a main content area, and then there's a footer. And inside the main content area, there's a series of articles which contain links and paragraphs. So this structure using these tags does appropriately convey what's within those tags. We know that this is obviously the main content. Without even highlighting it and seeing what it contains, we know just by reading the tag name that main must be the main content of that page. And we also have sections. So I'm going to indent these articles actually. There we go. So let's say we have multiple sections. We want to have a section with all the articles in it, and then we want to have a section called like About Me. Maybe it has some information about the site, and then a section for contact forms. So what we can do is use the section. Did I just turn on? Okay. So section is another HTML5 element that we can use to avoid using divs. And I'm going to go ahead and create a section here and make it say About Me. Some content would normally go here. And then another section. And we haven't learned about creating forms yet, so I'm not going to actually put a form in there. But just imagine that this is a great big block of text, maybe an image, but it is its own section. We can logically, when we think about this page, we can logically section it up into a contact section, an About Me section, and an article section. So I'm going to refresh. And now if you look through the code on the right here, we see, okay, we don't need to expand this because we know what's in here. We know that there's a title element, maybe there's some meta tags, maybe there's included resource like a style sheet. We don't need to look at any of that if we don't need to look at it. Within the body, we know what's in there, all the content of the page. We know the header. Okay, let's say we're trying to locate an article's link, maybe just to see what it links to. Which, I mean, you can totally hover over there and see what it links to, but we're looking through for something specific. So we're going to go into main because it makes sense that everything's in main. We're going to open up a section, and we see articles in here. So we know that it's one of these, and we know that the link is right there. So with sections, you can kind of section off your content logically, and it allows you to, again, keep things clean. And that's a big part of web development. I want you guys to really pay attention to the code that you're writing. If it doesn't indent properly, fix it. For instance, if this indented like that, I would not leave it like that. And maybe I'm OCD about this, I'm not sure, but it should look clean and balanced. Everything should be in the correct spot. And indentation matters very much. If the indentation is off, it's not going to break the page or anything, but it's going to make it really difficult when you come back to it to expand on your work and add things to it. You know, you can tell about how far in the content is. If it's indented way over here, you know it's in about, 10 different elements. It has about 10 different parents. So that's why that's important as well. So for right now, those are all the HTML5 elements that we're going to talk, that were introduced with HTML5 specifically to resolve div soup. So remember, if there's one of these elements that makes more sense to use than a div, use it, please.